Hey everyone, Mark from the Geek Church, and this is the second of our two-part 10-minute rant on the Shyamalan. And this time, I'm talking about The Watchers. Now, this one wasn't directed by Shyamalan, but it was directed by his daughter. So I think it's worth kind of putting in that category, and I think he produced it too. This was a film that I didn't really hear much about, and showed up on HBO, and I said, well, might as well watch it. I like M. Night Shyamalan, and if this is his daughter, surely she can do the same thing, right? Yeah, here's the thing. This is actually a better film than The Trap, which I talked about earlier. And I would have to say this film has a lot more in it than I thought it was going to, which I think is kind of awesome, really. But basically, the premise is that this gal is, I don't know, I think she's in Belfast. She's somewhere in Europe. And she has to deliver a bird to somebody. That's a pretty weak MacGuffin device, but might as well. Anyway, so she's on the way and cuts through this forest. I actually think she's using her GPS to do this. And then suddenly her phone starts giving out and her car breaks down. So, usually when the car breaks down, that's usually in a horror movie. That's like, uh-oh, things are about to go from bad to worse. And that's what exactly happens. She starts wandering around looking for help, and then she can't even find the road. Actually, she can't even find the car. She can't even find the road. It's like all disappeared. And apparently this forest is like, I don't know, it's like magical. You step in it and you just can't find your way out. And I think even this film, actually, I forgot to talk about the beginning of this film, which a lot of horror movies start out this way, if you notice, where it's like they focus on this character that they don't properly introduce. It's just like, he's just doing his thing, and he's usually going like, oh, he's coming after me, and stuff like that. And sure enough, the guy gets killed. And, I don't really, considering we live in an age where, like some movies start out like in the middle of the action, there's like this big event, and then the rest of the movie shows what has led up to that. I thought that's what the direction they were going with, but no, apparently not. This was actually just, I don't think that was a random character, but hey, actually, I'm gonna have to get in some certain plot points on this now. Anyway, so back to the present day reality of this film. This main character, she feels like she's being chased by something, or something's hunting her down, or it's bad. It's starting to get really bad. She comes to this shelter in the woods, and there's a lady at the door of the shelter saying like, get in if you want to live. And she gets in there, and there's like these two other people there. And then there's like this giant mirror that forms like one wall of this shelter. And apparently this is where the Watchers are on the opposite side. And the Watchers are these strange creatures that burrow in the ground during the day because they can't stand the light, but at night they come out and they just want to watch them. And so I don't know what this is. Now the first thing I was thinking about is like, okay, who built this shelter thing? Why is it how did this system get set up to exist this way? And why don't the creatures that are on the other side just break into this place and eat them, assuming that is their motives? Well, apparently that does happen. If the people inside the shelter are doing something that they don't like, they start banging on the glass there, and you can see like little cracks starting to form here. So basically, these characters can essentially go out during the daytime, but they discover that if they can't seem to go, there's like a barrier there. They can't pass that, or I'm not even sure how this got sort of put in there. How in the world do you set up this thing? Setting up this scenario is kind of odd. I kind of think there's something about this that just seems a little bit off, but we'll get to that. Anyway, so, and the main alpha dog in this shelter is named Madeline. And Madeline is all like, here's the rules. Don't go into the burrow things. Don't go out at night, blah, blah, blah. And because you're going to do that. And that means the main character's going to have to defy those rules, right? Yeah. So here's the thing. The main character realizes that, hey, maybe we do have a chance on this, because she actually does go down the burrow things, find some stuff that could actually help them out, but in the end, it doesn't really help out much. So, next step that happens. This is when the Watchers start to get really mad, because apparently they were out for too long, and when they get back, as they're tearing down the shelter, they discover that there is a hatch in the floor of the shelter. And I'm going like, there's a hatch there? And I'm going like, what is this, Lost? And so they open up this hatch and go down into this place. And apparently this guy was sort of, this professor guy, I guess he had built the shelter and he was studying these creatures on the other side who are, and I'm getting into spoiler territory, fairies. Yeah! These aren't the fairies like the Tinkerbell, bright and shiny ones that, that spray pixie dust and do stuff like that. They are these creatures that apparently humanity was at war with for a little while. Backstory is huge in this movie. And now these are like the last of the fairy folk or whatever. And they're sort of like these shape-shifting kind of things that are just, So apparently, and I don't know why they seem to be stuck in this place. Who knows? So they're finding out all this information, and when they go down the hatch, by looking at this certain professor's information, they discover that this professor apparently captured one of them, but apparently committed suicide shortly afterwards. But he gave them enough instruction for them to get out, with very specific instructions after they get out of this thing to destroy all the information related to this project or whatever. Strange, but the main characters actually do get out of the thing. So I actually kind of thought this was going to be one of those movies that takes place within the forest and then pretty much stay within the forest. Actually, what I thought this movie was going to be was simply like about a group of people trapped in the forest and they all get pecked off one by some sort of mad slasher thing. I mean, we've seen horror movies that have that premise, and that's been done and done and done with various settings and various types of slashers from the get-go. Okay, we know this thing. We know what to do here. But this one, I actually kind of thought, boy, this actually has a lot more lore and a lot more backstory than I ever thought a film like this would have. And I kind of thought you could probably make a series out of this. And maybe they wanted to. I don't know. As it is, I don't think this film performed very well, so I doubt you're going to get The Watchers 2 or whatever. The Watching. Yeah, no, I just kind of made that up. Yeah, that kind of fits. Anyway, so here's the deal. Once this main character gets out and discovers all this information about this professor, he also discovered that this professor had a wife. And this wife looks a lot like Madeline. And then I believe there's some sort of thing at the end where I actually believe that Madeline is in fact one of these fairies, but she's not like a purebred fairy. She's like a half-human, like the professor was her father, and her mother was a fairy, and essentially she was sort of ostracized by the fairy community. I'm sorry that this sounds terrible. By the fair folk community. Let's go with that. And so that's the reason why she is in the shelter and stuff like that, because they don't really like her all that much. So by the end of this movie, she's on in our world just trying to make it. This is actually a really very good concept for a movie. I actually kind of feel like there's a really good movie in here somewhere. And I don't know what makes it not work. I think it's just, there are certain things I just kind of went like, okay, I'm just sort of going like, for a while I was going like, okay, was this really thought out? Does this make sense? Since this is a Shyamalan movie, is there a twist? I suppose the twist would have been that Madeline was a fairy all along. There was a lot really showing that was the case. There was a lot to show that was justified as a twist. In other words, there's plot relevant information given that justifies that. Does it work? I would have to say this is a better effort than M. Night Shyamalan can do now with Trap. So, yeah. Okay, so I hope this is not this director's last film. Please don't be your last film. I'm told this is actually based on a book. I don't know how well it adapted. We'll find out. I don't really want there to be a sequel. As it is, I think the ending was a little bit kind of like deliberately creepy, but I didn't really feel like it was very sequel baity. But yeah. Anyway, go and see this on HBO if you haven't. And I'd like to hear your take on it. And if you want, leave a comment. Mark from the Geek Church, signing off.